The Terps should rush for over 200 yards against Villanova.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and also publisher on InsideBlackandGold.net. Make sure you guys go over there for all your Terps news. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial on NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I think that the Maryland Terrapins should be able to absolutely dominate the line of scrimmage. And I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a bold prediction for this game for the Terps. I think Maryland rushes for over 200 yards against the Villanova Wildcats. So I was reading a couple articles and I was looking through the Villanova roster, and I quickly realized Villanova doesn't have a single player above 300 pounds. I was reading the thing on an article on the on Testudo Times, the SB Nation page for the Maryland Terrapins, and they give really good game previews, and they were talking about how Villanova doesn't have a single player over 300 pounds. And I thought to myself, this is a Maryland team that hasn't been able to run the ball. This is a Maryland team that hasn't been able to do anything. And the run game continues to be kind of an afterthought. A lot of the times it feels like for Maryland football. It doesn't seem to be a thing that we prioritize. We like to chuck the ball around. We like to throw the football a lot, and that's how it's been. That's how it's been with Talia. That's how it's been with Billy Edwards this year. We still lead the Big Ten in passing attempts, which to me still is kind of weird, even with a new quarterback. And I thought it would be kind of a new system, but it's a really same thing. But I think it's going to change a little bit on this game against Villanova. So I do think that we are going to be able to run the ball, and I think we are going to run the ball effectively. It may be a bold take for me to say over 200 yards, but when I really started thinking about it, I was like, that includes Billy Edwards rushing. That includes everybody on the team rushing. If Ty Felton gets a jet sweep or a handoff or whatever, or if Caden Prather gets one of those types of handoffs, then that's going to count as rushing as well. And I thought, we can rush for over 200 yards against Villanova. I really do believe that. And that's going to take a game where it's like we don't throw the ball nearly as much because we don't have to, and I don't think we should. Why do we need to throw the ball a ton against Villanova? Sure, we're going to have the advantage on the outside. Sure, you want to get it to Ty, but I think they're going to line up and say, force Maryland to run the football. They haven't shown it all year. They haven't shown that they can run block all year, and so I do think that we can run the football. But I went back and did some research this year and said, okay, I think Maryland can run the ball really effectively. Villanova doesn't have a single player above 300 pounds, so we should be able to run it right down their throat. There's not a lot of big bodies in there. Maryland's offensive line should be able to get a ton of push. But then I looked back at their game last week against Towson, where they won by 1 point. A really close game, a low-scoring game, 13-14 against Towson Tigers, right in the Baltimore area, right not too far from the University of Maryland. And I looked what Towson did because I wanted to see, okay, how has Villanova stopped the run this year? Does it make sense for me to say that Maryland can rush for over 200 yards? And I think it's fair to kind of say yes. Towson's leading rusher on the day, Devin Matthews, had 14 carries for 135 yards, averaging 9.6 yards per carry. Towson's leading rusher absolutely gashed the Villanova Wildcats. And no offense to Towson, but we'll be able to put together more explosive run plays. We're going to have a better offensive line up front. So the fact that Towson did that on the ground, I think Maryland should absolutely be able to go above 300, or not 300 rushing yards, 200 rushing yards. And then I looked at some of the other games, and there's some other teams that have rushed the ball decently well in the past against Villanova. I just think that they're not big enough up front. I don't think they have enough girth up front. I don't think they have enough big enough bodies up front, and I don't see a reason why we can't rush the ball. Look at their first game against Youngstown State, excuse me. Youngstown State's leading rusher had 16 carries for 82 yards, averaging 5 yards per carry. Their next rusher, Ethan Wright, had 12 carries for 63 yards with averaging 5.2. So their quarterback was actually their leading rusher, Bo Brungard at Youngstown State with 16 carries for 82 yards. And then their leading running back had 12 carries for 63 yards. So I think that if Youngstown State, their quarterback, was able to go off on the ground against Villanova this year in the first game, I see absolutely the same thing happening with Billy Edwards. And I can see the same thing happening with the rest of our running back room. Villanova hasn't stopped the run well this year, and that's against lesser opponents. That's against Youngstown State and Towson. That's not even against teams that are like, oh no, like these teams are going to scare us. These teams are going to be really good football programs. So I think Maryland should absolutely be able to not only rush the ball. I think that I'm going to stay on my take that Maryland will rush the ball for over 200 yards. Now, what if we don't? What if the rushing game doesn't look great? It's like, let's say we average around 4 yards per carry. Sure, we can run it a little bit, but nowhere near effectively as we should be able to. That's when I'm hitting that red button. I'm hitting the alarm button. I'm slamming it. And I'm saying, wow, another year where we probably are going to have no help in the run game, and it's not going to be sustainable because even though Billy Edwards has shown he's good, I don't think he's good enough to just win games with zero run game. I don't think that's how it's going to work, especially when we get to the toughest part of our schedule. I think it's going to be tough to win those types of games without a run game. I've talked about it before. So I'm going to sound the alarm if the Terps can't run the ball on Saturday against Villanova. But I do think that we are going to be able to. I'm telling you, no big bodies up front, and then plus Billy Edwards and what he does with his legs. The only thing that I think could kind of allow this not to happen is Billy Edwards might not rush the ball as much because we don't really need to rush him against Villanova. We're pretty big favorites. We'll talk about that later. We're not like humongous favorites. Like the spread that they have it at, we'll talk about it later, but it's not like anything crazy. But I just don't think against Villanova, you're going to want to risk injury on Billy Edwards and run him a lot. But I do believe that Roman Hemby has a lot to prove. I said that his job's in danger, and a lot of you guys agreed with me. A lot of you guys continued the point of Roman Hemby's and his vision not being good, and him looking a step slower, and him just not being as good as the other backs. And the numbers don't lie. The numbers say he hasn't been as good. Now, the numbers don't always tell the whole story, but that's just what I'm kind of basing it off of. And then my eye test, too, is he hasn't been as good as the other backs, Nolan Ray and Colby McDonald, but he's got to prove something. And a game against Villanova where the offensive line should get pushed, where he's going to have some lanes, where his vision doesn't have to be excellent to find running lanes, I think it's a game where Roman Hemby could be good. Nolan Ray, you know he's always good for maybe a 30, 40-yard gain. I called it in the first game of the season. Wouldn't be surprised. And that's a big reason why I think that Maryland's going to be able to rush the ball for over 200 yards. I think that we're going to be able to get some huge chunks in the run game because of the explosiveness of Nolan Ray and Roman Hemby and Colby McDonald's consistency. He's always a consistent runner. Seems like he always is averaging above 5 yards per carry. He seems averaging the most amount per carry on the team. So I really do think that we'll rush the ball really effectively against Villanova. I think that we're going to do a really good job of that. And I'm predicting it to be an over 200 rushing yard gain. I think we're going to get up early on them. Sure, we're going to throw the ball, but I think we're going to get up early. I think the second half is where you're going to start to really see just pound, run the ball more. And soon before you know it, you're going to see, oh, Maryland rushed for 212 yards or Maryland rushed for 195 or something like that. I'm expecting we better go above 100. I think there's no reason not to. And I think you can use all the different backs. You can even throw some of the freshmen in there, some of the guys that don't play much. But I definitely want to see us rush for over 200 yards, and I think that the Terps can do it. Won't be easy, but I do think that's my bold take for the game, but I really believe that has a really good chance at happening. Let's go over some big storylines in the game. Does MJ Morris get any time at quarterback? What is the status of Andre Royos? Let's talk about some of those things, some of those headlines after this ad from eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, and it also keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for, and with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. So let's talk about this game a little bit. Let's talk about some storylines of this game because I do have a couple. Let's get this MJ Morris thing out the way. I think he's supposed to be healthy and ready to go. And again, I was reading the SB Nation thing article, and they talked about is it possible that MJ Morris could get some snaps? And I don't really see it. As long as the game stays somewhat close, I just don't see it. I think Billy Edwards has played way too good for there to be any quarterback controversy. And honestly, I didn't think it would be like this. I thought going into the year it was going to be whoever the starter is might barely hang on the entire season, might barely hang on the first 6 games, whatever the case may be. I thought they weren't going to be able to hold on. I wasn't really sure it was going to be the starter, but I thought the quarterback play wasn't going to be good. And so far, I wouldn't say it's been great. I wouldn't say it's been amazing, but it's been good, and it's given us a chance to win every single game and has put us in position to be 3-0, to be completely honest. So I don't really see MJ Morrison needing to play unless we're just blowing them out. Then you probably will get him some reps with a lot of other guys. But other than that, I don't see a reason he would play, even though he's back from injury. And I know he got a couple of snaps in the first game, but I think we're just farther along in the season and kind of know now, what we're looking for, who should be playing, who should be there. I think we kind of have a pretty good idea on that. Another really important thing is the health of Andre Roy. I honestly think you don't need to play him in this game, and I hope they don't. A game against Villanova, we should be able to rely on a backup. We should be able to rely on our offensive line depth, allow someone else to play. I need him to be healthy going into the Indiana game. Remember, this Indiana game is weird. It's interesting. Indiana's pretty good so far this year. And so I want Andre Roy to just rest up. His injury against Virginia looked pretty bad at the time, but now it seems to be kind of week to week, day to day. But I don't think there's any reason to play him. Give him another week to get healthy. I hope we can handle Villanova without him. And he's played pretty solid the entire year. He's been a pretty good player for us, so I don't think there's any reason for us to force him into action overall. I think that you just let him sit, let him get healthy, and I'm feeling good. Now, one of the things I do want to talk about is this is the last tune-up game. You know, in your schedule, you have a bunch of these tune-up games, but for Maryland football, this is the last tune-up game. So anything that needs to get worked out, any kinks, any plays, anything you want to try, this is the time to do it. This is supposed to be not an automatic win, but a game that is basically you can kind of try some things, try different players there, rotate different guys here, try different pass play here, see how it looks. I think before you get into next week and then after that, it doesn't slow down. I think this is the last game, the tune-up stuff against a Villanova team that we shouldn't really have trouble with. I know they have some good players, some solid players overall. And I know that they're 3-0, but it's not a team that we should have trouble with. And then you look at after Villanova, there's no more of these UConn, Villanova, no more of these basketball schools coming to play us. We have Indiana the next week, who's been really good, who's undefeated, Northwestern. We got USC, of course, who's ranked 11th, Minnesota, Oregon, Rutgers, Iowa, Penn State, and the last game of the season. So there's no more cupcake after this. So work out everything, get rid of all the stuff that you're not sure about, figure that out going into Indiana, and know your identity going into that game, because I don't want to feel like weird going into the – and I think we've done a pretty good job of kind of figuring it out. We look like a team that's going to rely on the pass. It's what we've been. So I can't say we've switched up from past years, but that's kind of what it looked like. And I think we've done a good job because we know who our quarterback is. I was scared, like maybe going into this Indiana game, there'd be a quarterback controversy soon. Maybe Billy had played somebody, didn't look great. Maybe MJ had also played somebody, didn't look good, and I was concerned about that. But I think we cleared up that Billy Edwards is the starter overall. And I think that this is also a game where I'm going to be looking at the secondary again. I think that's another storyline. They played better in the second half against Virginia, but still that first half was kind of questionable, kind of left a lot out there. I still don't feel awesome about it. And so I do believe that that's another thing that we're going to be looking at. I think if they play, they should be pretty locked down against Villanova, where we're going to be more talented than the receivers. We're going to have Villanova's not going to be able to really run the ball, or shouldn't be able to really run the ball against us. And I think that when we look at it, Villanova does have an experienced quarterback who's been a solid player, but I think that we should be able to clamp these receivers. And I'm going to be looking at Husky, Fisher, and I'm going to see if the young guys get in, or have they gotten better from the game against Michigan State? And they better have gotten better, because if they look worse against Villanova, then something's wrong, because Villanova is not supposed to torch you. So that's one thing that I'm absolutely going to be looking at, and something that is going to be important for the Terps. Something that I'm definitely interested in is just how do the Terps look in the secondary, the weakest spot right now, maybe on our entire team, to be completely honest. I know a lot of people probably think it's offensive line, and maybe before we thought quarterback, but what is it, secondary and offensive line maybe? I would argue the offensive line's been better than the secondary. So that's a thing that I'm definitely still concerned about, and something I'm definitely 100% going to be looking after. Do the Terps cover the spread against Villanova? Let's talk about that after this ad from FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com. And download America's #1 sports book. And then on FanDuel, you can also, of course, bet on games. Make sure you guys go on if you want to bet on the Maryland game. About to talk about the spread right now of the Maryland game, so make sure you stick around to hear about that. But if it's NFL, college football, FanDuel has got you covered. So just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sports book. So do the Terps cover the spread against Villanova? So we got an interesting kind of number for Maryland versus Villanova at 17.5. So to be completely honest, I thought it'd be a little bit higher, but then I knew that Villanova was better than I knew they were better than UConn, and the UConn line was 20.5. These lines feel a bit low to me. I don't know if it's just me. I don't know if I'm tripping or not. And I guess Vegas, I always like to think Vegas makes no mistakes. But this line feels definitely low. And I looked it up a little bit and kind of wanted to see what people think. And a lot of people think Maryland's going to cover the line. And sometimes when everyone goes for something, then it usually ends up being wrong. But the spread is 17.5. And I think the Terps cover. I'm not going to question it. I'm not going to think too hard about it. I think we're just the much better team, and I know Villanova is pretty solid for like FCS standards and all those different things. But for Big Ten and going into the shell, I'm not trying to act like Maryland's a hard place to play, but still going on the road is never easy. Going into Big Ten teams never easy. I don't see why we don't beat them by at least 20 points. Same thing happened against UConn where I'm like, the spread's 20. Like, how is UConn even going to score? And UConn couldn't score really. Won the game 50-7. So I see the same thing with Villanova. I'm like, okay, like even if they're better, even if maybe they can get a couple stops on defense, maybe like I don't see them really scoring points. I don't think they have a good enough passing game to take advantage of our lackluster secondary so far. I don't think they have a good enough offensive line where they can run the ball against us. I just don't see places where they can score. And Maryland's going to score probably over 30 points. So I don't see a cover in the bag for Villanova. Could I be completely wrong? Could the Terps put up a horrible game after the win against Virginia, after the comeback win against Virginia? Totally. Could probably see it happening where we're in a dogfight against Villanova, a basketball school, just because we didn't come out to play. But that's not how I see it happening. I see the Terps winning, and I see the Terps handling Villanova pretty easily. I see it being similar to the game that the Terps played a couple of weeks ago in week 1 against UConn. I don't see a way that I don't see the Villanova Wildcats coming to spread. I can see a road where it happens, but I think Villanova has to win the turnover battle, and Maryland right now is number 1 in the country in forcing turnovers. Keep seeing it on their Instagram. So I haven't seen any evidence that says that Maryland's not going to be really good at the turnover battle. I haven't seen anything that says that. And I think that Villanova is going to have to get some stops against us. Of course, they don't have to win the game, just to cover the game. And I think, like I said, I think Maryland's going to absolutely gas them in the run game. They don't have a guy above 300 pounds, and you get play action, and there'll be Ty Felton over the top. I just don't see that matching up particularly well. But Vegas's lines usually are right, to be honest. They're usually about right. And however they do it, whatever mathematics and whatever they do, it's usually pretty on. So I do think that, yeah, I'm saying the Terps cover is my prediction, and I want to say I've gotten every game right this season. I think I have, because I think back to week 1 against UConn, I said the Terps would cover. Week 2 was week 2 the Michigan State game? Yeah, week 2 was the Michigan State game. I said Michigan State would cover because I didn't get the 9.5. I said Maryland would beat Virginia and cover the spread in that game, and they did that. And now, so we're in week 4. I'm 3-0 right now. I'm predicting the Maryland games. I feel like you kind of have a hand up when you watch them play a lot, and I think they cover the spread against this Villanova team. Let's try and make it 4-0. I hope you guys are I hope you guys have been doing my predictions, because they've been right so far. In terms of the total, I haven't been right in the total for sure. But the total's a little bit harder. I feel like it's at 43.5. I'd probably lean over just because I think Maryland will score a lot, but I'm also like, I don't know how much Villanova can score. So it's kind of a hard kind of bounce around with the over under overall, but I do think that I lean over just because I can see Maryland having a big day, rushing the football. I think they get some deep shots as well. But that's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked on Terps.